This course will begin with Introduction to First Responder Basics. It will also include 5 subsections related to security response. Subsequent sections will cover medical emergency response, fire emergency response, natural and man-made disaster response, criminal incident response, and civil incident private property incident response. The focus of these sections will be a security guard's initial response to an incident. In particular, response within the first 3 to 5 minutes. For most of these incidents, the job of a security guard will be to assess and initially address incidents prior to the eventual response of professional first responders, such as the police, firefighters, emergency medical service personnel, or paramedics. For most major incidents, these professional responders will be on site, ideally within about 3 to 5 minutes. Security guards are often first on scene and do not have that time lag and must respond in real time before the professional responders are able to do so. Security officers on normal patrol, perhaps on a break period or just arriving at work, are immediately present. At times, incidents unfold right in their presence or within a short distance of their location. Not all incidents will receive a professional response in 3 to 5 minutes. There are some, particularly of a criminal nature, which will not require such an immediate response. But for the most part, we will be covering matters that require urgent attention. In this first introduction section, we will discuss initial response to almost any major incident and outline the specific role in detail the security guard will play from initial response on their part to the arrival of police, fire, or EMS. We will outline also some precautions when responding. For example, security guards are not equipped with breathing apparatus, so we would have them respond to a fire or smoke condition with caution. Many guards also do not carry a firearm. What is their role in a violent intruder incident? We'll look into that as well. Once we have reviewed the basics, we will proceed into specific incident response. These are incidents a security guard has potential to encounter at any time at their property locations, often without any warning. A first responder is an employee of an emergency service likely to be among the first people to arrive and assist at the scene of an emergency, such as an accident, a natural or man-made disaster, a terrorist attack potentially. Professional first responders typically include police officers, firefighters, paramedics, and emergency medical technicians. Professional refers mainly to their level of training and expertise. Security guards are essentially first responders in that they are normally the first to arrive or be present at the scene of an emergency. While they may not possess the training level of professional responders, they are on site at their property locations to provide a bridge from the initial moments of an incident to the eventual arrival of police, fire, and EMS. In some ways, the actions security guards take initially will include what professional responders will provide in greater detail once they arrive. Emergency situations often happen without warning, and security guards must be prepared to respond. Although emergency situations vary in nature, everything starts with an assessment of the scene when initially arriving. In Delaware, first responders indicate they have arrived on a scene using a code called 10-2. While this may or may not be used at your property location, this is in essence you announcing that you have arrived and are ready to tell everybody what is happening at the scene. Arriving at the scene of an emergency can be complicated. There will be times when what you believe is initially presenting or what you have been told is happening may not turn out to be that way. Don't be overly concerned about that. Your priority is to arrive and act upon what you observe and know about the incident. If things do change, then update everybody, but initially you'll go with what you know. This will also allow you to understand who and what you will need to assist you. For example, if you have a criminal incident, you more than likely will need a police or law enforcement response. If you have a fire or a smoke condition, you'll need the fire department. A medical condition, you will obviously need EMS or probably the paramedics. If you have a medical issue or somebody is injured, provide whatever assistance you can after you have requested the necessary professional responder assistance. Even if you're not certified for first aid or other types of medical training, you will still have a role to play. You'll need to initially assess that patient and try to ascertain exactly what might be going on with them, what kind of medical condition they have. Perhaps you have a scene that is potentially dangerous, a smoke condition, a violent intruder incident. Your priority is to move people away from the area. Maybe set up a perimeter so people do not re-enter or go into a crime scene. And also remember, don't enter a scene yourself if you do not have adequate protection. Are there persons which you need to gather information from or about? Are there offenders who are involved, victims, witnesses? If it is possible to obtain information or assign another guard to gather this information, this will be very valuable to law enforcement when they arrive on the scene. When professional responders do arrive, such as the police, fire, and EMS, follow their lead in providing whatever assistance they need. Security personnel and responding agencies should endeavor to have a cooperative relationship. For most of my time in the industry, I worked hard to develop, enhance, and maintain a working relationship with local first responders. I'm happy to say these efforts paid off normally, and genuine cooperative relationships were established. These are the personnel you will need in a crisis, and while it may not always be possible, security should make every effort to know these people before a crisis happens. Past this, security's goal should be to develop a relationship where whatever agency responds, they understand what their role is as opposed to the role of security officers. Yes, egos often hamper such efforts, and professional responders often see themselves as the leading authority, and we need to let them take that lead in most situations, as they are the people that are specifically trained to deal with what we call them on the property to do. Much of the work for a cooperative relationship begins at a management level, obviously. Regardless, security guards will often interact with first responders routinely, some even daily. Most often, those are law enforcement interactions, but others as well, depending on how busy and open to the public your property may be. Most often, these are the same group of people, so get to know them. Understand their job as opposed to yours. Follow their lead. Some personalities blend better than others, obviously, and that's just human nature. But don't be shy about making the effort, and remember, you have your role and they have their role. So if you're assigned to a new property location, or maybe you mainly work at the same location, it's important either way to have a property-specific emergency plan in mind. Hopefully your on-the-job training will include such an overview, but sometimes these matters are overlooked or conducted quickly as security assignments can change depending on the needs of the agency or the client and fluctuating personnel deployments. Here are 5 basic steps to understand about your individual property environments. Develop an action plan. This will actually require you to use your imagination to a certain degree. Depending on your property where you're assigned, assess what happens there, what hazards might exist, what incidents are most likely to take place. Again, on-the-job training, emergency manuals, and other items should be utilized, but still, obtaining that mental framework in your mind will be most helpful. Also remember the resources that already exist on your property, the people that are already working there, your other officers, your supervisors. They are probably and often your best point of reference. Know your location. Oftentimes, security guards are simply handed the keys to a property and the rest is kind of left up to them. So make sure you tour your property, interior and exterior, anything or any areas where you might be responsible for. Know all of these areas. It can include your common areas, your storage rooms, your sprinkler rooms, electrical and utility rooms, even where hazardous materials are stored. Do you have all of the keys and methods to access all areas of the property? Also, understand where the emergency generators might be located, your phone systems, your contacts for management when something goes wrong. Again, all of this should hopefully be organized for you in some way, but having a template in mind is usually best. Keep in mind, different properties have different priorities, hazards and specific response protocols associated with them. If you're in a retail environment, what goes on there? Medical facilities, office buildings, warehouses, event security, all of these issues associated with such a property should be you preparing for what you might be expecting right from day one. Locate and check the equipment you will need to work on that property. For security, some of the basics normally include radios, flashlights, first aid kits, keys. There are more than likely going to be items already in place to assist you. Fire extinguishers, fire alarms, CCTV. Most likely you will need some guidance on using these items, which are specific to your properties. The property evacuation plan. You want to be thinking about primary and secondary routes, fire exits, even roof hatches. Think about this in terms of leading yourself and others to safety in the event of a fire or a violent intruder incident or another type of an emergency. So procedures for evacuation. First off, you want to make sure that you're remaining calm. You want to organize and remind people to evacuate in an orderly fashion. You want to have them evacuate through the nearest exit, depending on availability or the proximity of a threat. Now, a threat could be what potentially is causing the evacuation. Is there a fire or a smoke condition? Obviously, you don't want to draw people nearer to that. If you have a potentially an active shooter situation or somebody that's running around with a weapon, you want to, again, evacuate people from the proximity of where that person might be. You want to pay special attention to those with special needs or disabilities, also the elderly and small children. And just a reminder that elevators should not be used during fires or earthquakes. You want to guide evacuated people to a safe area, and if it's more practical, actually just have them leave the property. If you have specialized training or apparatus such as first aid kits, AED units, a Narcan kit, tools for maybe breaking into vehicle windows, you want to find out where that apparatus is stored before an emergency actually occurs. Also, if you have specific training such as being first aid certified or you know CPR, when that call does come, perhaps you're the best person to be responding. There may be property-specific or client-specific training that you've received. This might include lockout-tagout procedures for electrical work, perhaps shutting down sprinkler valves when a sprinkler head might accidentally be discharged, maybe using a license plate reader. These are just some of the examples of specific assignments that you might have at your properties. So we have already stressed the idea of formulating a cooperative and professional relationship with our professional first responders. This includes all elements of response from initially reporting incidents to their eventual arrival on our properties. We will now review a somewhat fundamental concept, which is the first step when advising first responders we need their assistance. When we concentrate on our security response to major incidents and our role within that first 3 to 5 minutes of an incident, first and foremost is the idea of contacting 911. The process of contacting 911, which is calling a regional communication center, is designed to be simple for users while allowing professional dispatchers to immediately understand and begin sending response our way. This is also where us understanding our role can make everyone's stressful involvement an easier task. In the end, we would hope this leads to a comprehensive deployment of resources delivered in the most time-efficient manner. Part of our initial contact with 911 is knowing what they need to know and having the answers ready to go. In Delaware, each of our 3 counties has an emergency communication call center. This is for requesting fire, police, or EMS to your location. In Newcastle County, there is Regional Communications, or RECOM. In Kent County, there is KentCom. And down in Sussex County, there is SUSCOM. Providing 911 operators with specific information is important, as it will determine what type of response they will send. This is referred to as triaging, where a dispatcher will manage the priority of incoming calls against the available resources. First responders are a finite resource. In other words, they are realistically only so many police officers, firefighters, EMTs, and paramedics available. We want to preserve these resources so they are effectively utilized throughout the community. Then when our property location really needs help, we in turn are provided with what we need in proportion to what actually the emergency is. For medical emergencies, we want to remember 4 specific life-threatening issues which might be affecting our patient, but will set the necessary response in motion from our first responders. Those 4 issues would be difficulty breathing, chest pains, somebody that's unconscious, or somebody that is severely bleeding. A dispatcher is probably going to ask you what's going on, and we want to be as specific as possible in outlining these specific issues regarding a patient. This is not always going to be possible, but if it is, the patient or somebody accompanying them are the best people to speak directly to 911, as they can explain symptoms, prior medical histories, and this will allow dispatchers to further understand what response is specifically needed. When we talk about specific medical response, this mainly comes down to 2 methods. Basic life support, or BLS, which will always respond to all medical incidents, or more advanced response, which is just that, advanced life support, or ALS, and normally that's categorized as paramedics. EMTs, or emergency medical technicians, are trained to respond quickly to emergency situations regarding medical issues, traumatic injuries, and accident scenes. EMTs are normally assigned to an ambulance and transport patients. Firefighters are normally EMT certified. All of them are trained in basic first aid and medical response. They are not certified to administer most medications. Paramedics are specially trained medical technicians licensed to provide a wide range of emergency services, such as defibrillation and the intravenous administration of drugs, and that can happen before or during transportation to a hospital. Paramedics are not dispatched to all medical calls. Perhaps you have a patient with a sprained ankle. Now, yes, that person will need medical treatment, but such a condition is not normally considered life-threatening. We again want to preserve our paramedics for life-threatening issues, properly utilizing that finite resource. For very serious conditions, when timely medical attention is essential at a designated medical trauma unit, trooper medics, which are state troopers that are trained as pilots and paramedics, may respond to unique incidents via helicopter. This is called medevacing. Moving on to requesting first responders for fire or natural or man-made disaster. We want to concentrate on describing the incident to the dispatcher as specifically as possible. And we want to make sure we're indicating if there might be any persons trapped or cannot escape. Also indicating if there are any hazardous materials present, such as fuel, chemicals, explosives, or other poisons that might be present on your property. Then on to requesting response for a criminal incident. We want to point out what type of crime is being reported. Is that crime in progress, or about to be committed, or already perhaps it's taken place? Are there any weapons involved, and what type they might be? The number of suspects, the location and direction of flight of the suspects, if they happen to be leaving the property. If your property experiences a major incident, such as a fully engulfed structure fire, an active or violent intruder incident, a mass exposure incident, there will most likely be a response from multiple agencies who would then coordinate and establish a command center to manage operations. Such a center can be set up in an emergency vehicle, a tent, or other place. They are designed to be quickly assembled so lead managers from each agency can work together. Depending on the incident, one agency will establish full command of the scene with other agencies working through this command. Major fire or disaster scenes or serious motor vehicle accident scenes in Delaware are coordinated by the fire department. For major criminal incidents, again, such as an active shooter or a violent intruder incident, the police will be the lead agency. Regardless, these command centers are important for security personnel to understand as they may be called upon to participate. Security knows the facility presumably quite well, and your knowledge and details about the property will be important for the responders to know and understand. Normally, the most senior security person or manager will be assigned coordination efforts at a command center. One day this might be you. One of the items outlined for initial response by security personnel is the scene itself. Perhaps you will be moving people away from a dangerous scene or providing shelter. Some of you may be familiar with this concept from violent intruder response, which is naturally run, hide, and fight. All of this would be contingent upon what's actually going on in your actual incident. When assessing a scene, security guards should always use caution when potentially entering a dangerous scene. You cannot help anyone if you become a victim yourself. Most security personnel are not equipped with the items necessary for protection, such as firearms for a violent intruder incident, breathing apparatus for a fire or smoke condition, and other scenes. For medical responses, let's say we're responding to a scene where there is drug paraphernalia or other situations where a biohazard might be present. All security personnel should carry protective gloves, latex or non-latex, determine if you're allergic to that first. Their application should be considered whenever such hazards are present. Please make sure you review the attached video on the proper application of personal protection equipment. The video will outline proper application and disposal methods, and specifically for latex gloves. In addition, other items to consider might be a portable CPR mask. Security personnel should locate and review all PPE, first aid kits, AEDs, sharps disposal containers, and other equipment so they are familiar with their locations.